They may all hold the title of mayor, but they each face unique challenges in their respective counties. That's been evident as we continue to navigate through the pandemic. And while counties lift more restrictions, other issues like homelessness, affordable housing, and crime have never gone away. Join the discussion with our 4 county mayors, Rick Blangiardi, Derek Kawakami, Mitch Roth, and Mike Victorino. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Hawaii's 4 county mayors are tasked with the job of solving problems facing their communities. The majority of the issues are universal: health, safety, economic recovery from the pandemic, homelessness, affordable housing, over-tourism, traffic, and much more. Others are county-specific, like the embattled Honolulu Rail Project and the unknown future of the 30-meter telescope on Hawaii Island. Tonight, we'll discuss the challenges and choices facing each mayor. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guest. Derek Kawakami was elected as Kauai County's mayor in 2018. Prior to that, he served in the state legislature and on the Kauai County Council. Born and raised on the Garden Isle, he showed off his dancing, cooking, and magic skills in a series of social media videos during the pandemic. In 2018, Mike Victorino was elected as mayor of Maui County, which includes the islands of Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Kaho'olawe. Before that, he served as a member of the Maui County Council. He met his wife while they both worked at McDonald's, and this year marks their 45th wedding anniversary. Congratulations. Mitch Roth was elected as Hawaii County Mayor last November. Prior to that, he served as the county's prosecuting attorney since 2012. He has a bachelor's degree from UH Manoa and a law degree from Whittier Law School. Between college and law school, he taught English in Japan, where he met his wife. And Rick Blangiardi is in his first term as Honolulu Mayor. He was previously the longtime general manager of Hawaii News Now. He moved to Honolulu in 1965 when his dad was transferred to Pearl Harbor. He was a starting linebacker at UH and went on to become a coach and color analyst for the football team. Welcome, all of you. Fun to add a little color to all of your bios tonight. We're so happy to have all of you on. We want to start with the big headline of the day, and that, of course, is the COVID-19 case count statewide. We've got a graphic to illustrate that. 243 cases there. Statewide average going up 185% over the last 14 days. When you break it down county by county, you can see there that Hawaii Island, unfortunately, is leading the charge, up 251% over 14 days, followed by Honolulu, 194%, Maui County, 154%, and Kauai at the end, they're up 47%. Those are some startling numbers. We want to start with Hawaii Island. Mayor Roth, your reaction to those numbers tonight?
Yeah, today was a really bad day. We had 50. Before it was, 9, 13, 20. Still, those numbers are not great. I think what we're seeing, and I think this is on all islands, that we're seeing a lot of people who are unvaccinated who are, coming down with COVID. I think it's like 98%. And that's really scary. We have a lot of people that took a lot of responsibility and, got their shots. And unfortunately, we have a ways to go. We need to get some people to get vaccinated.
On your island, do you think it's time to have renewed restrictions?
I don't believe it's time to have renewed restrictions yet. I think, we really need to get the word out, which we've been doing. We've been doing testing again, and we need to get people to get vaccinated.
Mayor Blangiardi, I want to go with you. You are next on that list when we look at the rising in case counts. I actually looked up the previous administration's tier system, and under the prior administration's tier system, we would have been in tier 2 by now. Do you think it's time to scale back some of the openings that you've done?
No, I'm not prepared to do that. I mean, today was alarming. The numbers have been rising. We had 146 cases on Oahu today, so that's of concern. But I come right back to the fact that on those eligible for vaccinations on Oahu, 72% of our population has been fully vaccinated. And we've got 61% from the standpoint of statewide, or including our kids. But, so we got about 135,000 youth right now that are not eligible for vaccinations. This has been a tremendous effort by this community, this island, to respond accordingly and appropriately, if you will, to the prevalence of the disease. So at this point right now, I have no interest in rolling back unless we get ordered to do that. And I don't intend to do that, and I intend to argue that point.
Is there a benchmark, if you will, under the previous administration? I know that you didn't necessarily agree with that tier system because it didn't account for the vaccine, which of course is a variable that we didn't have when that was created. But, with that system, there were parameters that the public could follow. They knew that, okay, we get to a certain case count and there will be certain consequences. Is there a number for if you will, if we get consistently 200 cases a day on Oahu, I mean, what is the level that actually will make you want to turn back to restrictions, or is there no level?
Well, let's be clear. First of all, the Department of Health is really the guiding light in this whole deal, and we take our direction from them at the end of the day. But at the same time, my biggest concern right now, quite honestly, is the vulnerability of our kids, because we're now seeing kids getting sick. That heretofore we thought they were somewhat immune, if you will, or protected from the disease, but we have adults refusing to get vaccinated. We're now beginning to get kids sick. I want to watch that. We'll look for the incidents, but I'm not tied to a certain number, Yunji. Part of this whole effort right now, and what we've been going through, is about our own economic recovery. And to roll back anything has dire consequences. So I want to be really careful about what we're doing in the broader definition of public health, which is beyond case counts of unvaccinated people.
Mayor Victorino, let's go to you. Mayor Blangiardi did mention children, and I want to point out that 66 of that 243 were under the age of 18. That's 27% of the cases today, 18 and under, I should say. The Department of Health doesn't actually suss out the different levels there, so some of those were eligible for vaccination, but the vast majority not. What is your take on the numbers tonight?
Well, let's start with those who are not able to get vaccinated, the lower age groups from 0 to 11. I'm very concerned that adults have been negligible in not getting vaccinated and now are spreading it amongst the children, which then spread it amongst other children. And that's with school reopening on August 3rd. It is very concerning for my community about going back to school. Yet I am encouraging and really wanting to see them to go back, see the children go back to school to have in-person classes. For us here, we've had this, and we've had bigger numbers before. We've been able to weather the storms by keeping a steady pace as far as vaccinations and as well as testing. Also, our hospital and our medical facilities are not being taxed at this time. We monitor that very closely. That is my real gauge. If we overcapacitize or overcapacity as far as our hospital is concerned, and we get where there's a real challenge in our facility, our medical facility, then I would then look at rolling back. But at this point, I have no need to go back as far as where we're at this very moment.
Mayor Kawakami, you were very well known for having some of the strictest restrictions during the height of the pandemic. Are you inclined to go back to some of those, given the numbers that we're seeing? 47% increase compared to the other counties. It's not as bad, but it's still significant.
Yeah, it is still significant, and we're not looking at rolling back or adding any more restrictions. The whole reason why we took a very conservative approach was to get our vulnerable population and workers vaccinated, and we were able to do that. The people that are becoming sick have chosen not to take the vaccine or are too young, and that is our biggest concern, the keiki. But we're looking at hospitalizations. I really think that we have to learn how to coexist, and this is part of coexisting with a virus. But I would like to say that for anybody that hasn't gotten a vaccination, there's many vaccines available. It's very convenient. If you want more information, reach out. I took one, my whole family took one, and that is the best path forward.
I want to ask each of you, and we'll sort of go in the reverse order. Mayor Kawakami, I'll stick with you. On this whole vaccination point, the state has sort of taken, a carrot approach versus a carrot and a stick approach, saying, okay, we'll do a giveaway, we'll make these widely available, we'll try to make this as easy as possible. But we are at sort of a standstill now where the numbers are more of a trickle than a flood that we saw right at the beginning. Do you think that there is, a more aggressive approach that should be taken? For example, as a county, in your role, would you ever mandate that county employees have vaccinations? Is there some other approach that you think is appropriate to try to push this?
Yunji, I think the bigger issue is it boils down to trust. When I talk to people about why they're hesitant, a lot of it boils down to trust. And there's no quick and easy answer to fix that. I got involved in politics because I didn't agree with it. I didn't trust it. And I said, so I'm gonna get involved and make some changes. And now that I'm here, I realize that it is a very, very hard thing to do on a government level, even on a personal level. So no, I don't think there's a quick fix. What I do hope and wish for is that the federal government would move to fully authorize this vaccine. I mean, so many people have taken it. It's proven to be effective. What are we waiting for? And that's a question that I have not seen an answer for.
Mayor Victorino, what are your thoughts on mandating vaccine for county workers if and when the vaccine is fully authorized?
Well, I believe that when you're looking at vaccinations, even if it is fully authorized by the FDA, to ask someone or to mandate that everyone had to do it, there are particular cases where either by being allergic to it or other health issues prohibits that. And to mandate it would force people to maybe sometimes do something they shouldn't do. I think trust is very important. Knowing that you're taking care of yourself and your family is really the mantra that I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 months. Because when you protect those, you protect your community at large. So it's very difficult. But I think what I find too is a lot of false information out there on social media and other means that have made people become afraid of getting vaccinated. And that has caused another real dichotomy that none of us really thought would happen. So overall, even though Maui County is the lowest percentage-wise of vaccinated population, not total population, I still believe we have a good chance of getting them, like what Mayor Kawakami said, once the FDA fully approves it, I think then you'll see a surge and an uptick in that respect.
Why do you think that Maui County has that specific challenge? Why do you think it's been so hard to convince people to get the shot, particularly in Maui?
Well, I think Maui is a very different community. You have a lot of people who live in certain areas that think differently, that have come to live here, have brought their ways of life because they didn't like it where they were and they felt they could do it here. And that's really changed really the whole aspect and local style that we've so used to. And so it's become a real challenge to convince people that when you get vaccinated or when you do anything, it's not just for yourself, it's for the community and your family at large. And so that's the challenge we face, but it's not a challenge that's insurmountable. And I'm really positive that we can make a difference by just continuously working together.
Mayor Blangiardi, your thoughts on mandatory vaccinations, and if not that, how do we move the needle on this?
Well, the case counts have come up a little bit among our county workers, but it's still not a significant number. And I don't believe philosophically that I would mandate. We're going to do everything we can to encourage. I think the two things that have been touched upon here could hopefully trigger. I think FDA approval is going to be important. At least some of the people I've talked to still have this fear about being vaccinated. That seems to be something that they're anticipating or looking forward to, or maybe perhaps waiting. And the other thing is, I do think if in fact we can start vaccinating kids 5 to 12, that we'll see an uptick there. We'll see a surge there for parents who want to protect their kids, especially now that we see kids getting sick. And so within that, like case in point, on our island, roughly 135,000 kids under the age of 12. If we were to, I don't know how many 0 to 5, but if we were to get, half of that many vaccinated, that would be tremendous. And that's just at half. And I would anticipate maybe we'd see even more. So it's sort of like that right now. The one thing I will say is as I've gotten older, I've learned that people fear differently. I've had conversations with people who just refuse to get the drug, take the vaccine, even though they have evidence that it's safe, they know it, but they just can't get there. And I don't even know how to reach them. So it's going to take that. I think our kids getting sick is going to motivate some adults, because I think this is the first time we've been confronted with this situation where it's become very real.
Mayor Roth, I'd like to get your thoughts on mandatory vaccinations. You know, it's not under your purview because this is the state system of prisons, but we know that there's been a tremendous outbreak, unfortunately, in Hilo at the prison system there. You know, a worker like that in a jail system that is a front-facing worker that is interacting very closely with others, you know, is it appropriate ever to have mandatory vaccinations? And if not that, how do you convince people to take the shot?
Yeah, I have a real problem philosophically as well as mandating people. I think there's some constitutional issues that come into play there. So the question is really how do you get these people to do it? And I think one of the things that has been talked about is the FDA coming out and saying, yeah, this is safe, and fully backing it. We've been working on, all four of us have been working on different kinds of things, media, going out and having other kinds of things. We're looking at doing a Vax concert. It's really difficult when there's a lot of information that's really just false information out there to change people's minds sometimes. But I kind of think of it like a parent saying, I'm not going to feed my kids because sometimes kids can choke. It doesn't make sense. They can have allergies, but if you don't feed them, they're going to die. So the same thing with vaccines. You don't have the vaccine, you're probably going to get sick, or you may get sick. And if you get sick, you're more likely to get very ill.
I want to move on to another topic. We've got a number of questions here, and we appreciate those of you who are calling and writing in. Please do continue to voice your opinions here. I've got two for Mayor Victorino, but I think this is something that applies to all of you, and that is on this concept of over-tourism. Kahealani on Maui says, Mayor Victorino, why aren't you putting a cap on Maui tourists? And Wilfred in Kahului says, when are you going to start listening to your residents and do something about over-tourism? We know that you have spoken out and said, we want fewer airplanes. What can you do on this issue? Because it does feel on all the islands, but particularly on yours, that this is reaching a boiling point.
Well, I thank you for that question because here in Maui County, we have had such a great uptick in returning visitor that it's made it very difficult on our resources, our infrastructure. The road to Hana has been impacted tremendously. Our hotels and other areas are really being taxed. There is no way you can control tourism. This is the United States of America, and if somebody wants to come, they can come. All of us face that fact. I've asked for reduced airlifts, and to some minor success, we've had that. And really, one of the things I keep reminding everyone that right now, the reason this pent up surge is occurring is because there's no place else to go. Many of the other resort areas resort destinations throughout the world are closed at this time. Europe, Asia, look at even Japan. They have the Olympics and they're not even opening up to anybody from the outside. So there is a real challenge we face in that respect. We are working on different aspects to reduce the number of visitors coming or reservations with our parks, with our various attractions and various landmarks, so that we can have better control on the crowds that go there and the times they go there. So we're working on reservation systems and being able to really curb the amount of tourists. But there's a lot of people that are very thankful that we have the visitors back, because they're now able to get back to work and get some normalcy in their families, because they're able to provide for their families, not only in the resorts, but many ancillary and small mom and pop businesses are the benefactors of the tourists that are visiting us. The hospitality industry has been gracious. So it's a mixed bag. Those who complain, I understand, and you got used to having the beaches and having the roadways and having everything the way it used to be. Well, we've got to try to work to manage our tourism, and we're working on that right at this very moment I speak.
Mayor Blangiardi, when we think about tourism, we're not at the levels that we were pre-pandemic, and yet people really do feel choked in some instances. Are you comfortable with the level of arrivals right now? And what do we do with this animosity that seems to be growing in certain sectors of our community toward the visitors?
Yeah. Well, since we've come in, we've been looking at how our city could help with managing tourism as a concept. And the clear call for us has to do with illegal vacation rentals. So if you look at the 2019 model, we had 10.5 million visitors. If you talk to the hoteliers, they will tell you statewide on an annual basis, we can handle 7.5 million people. So in reality, we had 3 million people in illegal vacation rentals. It's been a huge issue on this island, as it is, I believe, certainly on Maui as well. So we've gone to work on that project because right now in the short term, as Mayor Victorino just said, we're the only place to go. People have saved up money, they've been cooped up. We're getting this influx of visitors, but I'm looking at it more from a long-term strategy. And we're very close to rolling out our plans, which we think is really going to mitigate illegal vacation rentals. It's going to be very difficult. People who own properties are not going to be happy about that have been using them as illegal vacation rentals. But we think we've developed a good plan and we're just about ready to swing into action. It's going to take us a few more months. I've been meeting regularly with the hotel industry and they're very much in approval and support. And our city council is also in favor and support of what we want to do. So we've got to change some tax laws fundamentally. And I'll just leave it at that. But we're going to be very aggressive because we think we need to help manage tourism. For so long, people have talked about marketing tourism and whether or not Hawaii is being competitive in this new global arena of people traveling with money, availability of all kinds of places. Now we're dealing with the fact we've got too many people, so what can we do about that? And we've also taken one other step. What we did with Hanauma Bay and what we're going to do in a couple of other places with impact fees with respect to the prices to get in, at the same time keeping them free for local people, we think will also have some benefit and some effect.
I think a lot of people will be very interested, and I know you just offered us a preview, but if you could give us more specifics on that crackdown that you're talking about. One of the issues has been that while laws may have been passed, the enforcement simply wasn't there. Will this be different?
Yes, it will be, and that's about as far as I'm going to go in tonight's show. But invite me back some other time. But that's the whole idea, is how do you enforce? Candidly, our enforcement measures of the past have been a joke, which is why it didn't happen. You can't have a couple of guys knocking on doors, seeing who's home, so they can talk to the person who owns the vacation rental. That just doesn't work. So we have looked at this and examined it very hard, even before we started receiving tourists. So we're taking a long-term approach to this. I'm going to say it again. A lot of people have speculated, what's the number? If tourists at Hawaii could handle and maybe do so well and safely and health and from a health standpoint, 7.5 to 8 million a year probably, unless they start building new hotel rooms. And we want to help manage down to that number.
Mayor Kawakami, what's your take on this over-tourism tension that we continue to see throughout the islands, and I'd imagine on yours as well?
Yeah, I think the issue is exacerbated by the fact that we didn't have an acclimation period. I equate it to buying a new fish for your aquarium. You don't just go home and throw that fish in. You let them float in the bag, let it get used to its environment. And I don't think anybody had anticipated how quickly tourism would roar back, and it did. And I will tell you though, every segment of our community has a vested interest in striking the right balance. The state of Hawaii does, the county of Kauai does, and the visitor industry does. Because if we cannot maintain a good experience for everybody, those visitors are not going to come back. So we're looking at changing systems and processes from within, looking at transportation systems to take visitors off the road, create incentives for visitors to take other forms of transportation, such as shuttles. We're working with the private industry. We're looking at parking fees at our beach parks. I'm looking at raising the fees for camping for non-residents, because I'm not necessarily trying to market Kauai as a camping destination. I want them to stay in our hotel resorts, our timeshares, and our bona fide legal vacation rentals. And we were very proactive as a county to actually regulate, strictly enforce on the illegal TVRs. And, recently we were able to shake hands with Airbnb, the Expedias, the third-party platforms of the world, to tell them, look, work with us, market the units that are legal. That's all we're asking you to do. They've been great partners. They are what we consider great companies to work with. And that is going to help us move forward with striking that right balance. But it's going to be a big challenge, Angie. Our businesses right now that have had to make sacrifices, they're getting their workers back. They are able to increase their customer count. And, there's a saying, you got to go fishing when the fish is biting. So for those companies that are dependent on the visitor industry, they are seeing a good return on economy, and we should look at this issue as a glass half full. And I say we got to continue to work on striking that right balance.
Mayor Roth, what are your thoughts on some of the user impact fees that Mayor Kawakami is talking about? On Hawaii Island, having shuttle services like the ones that we've seen on Maui and Kauai, they're a little bit harder to do just because you're covering quite a bit of ground. The distance from, let's say, the airport in Kona all the way up the Kohala coast, not all the shuttles want to go that far. But what do you think is the key for that? Would it be more user impact fees? How do we deal with this over-tourism issue on an island as big as yours?
Well, I think there's no one silver bullet for this. I think there's a whole bunch of things that we need to look at, and all of our islands are working on what they call destination management plans, or DMAPs. And some of the things that we're looking at, in addition to what's already been mentioned, is maybe taking some areas and closing them down to tourists for certain periods of time. For a month or so, let those places kind of regain what they have and cool down for a little bit, and then open them up at certain periods and close them down at certain periods. But I think we have to realize, and Mayor Victorino brought this up, that we're seeing something at this time that is only probably a temporary situation. People have no place else to go. They've been pent up. So we're seeing big numbers now. Those numbers will probably change when other destinations open up. And we have to make sure that we're taking care of the people who have been struggling. We've got a lot of people who, were in the lines. I think each island saw this. The food banks were doing a lot of feeding. And so it's important to get people back to work in safe environments. And that's really what we've been looking at this time.
One of the things affecting all 4 counties is the tussle that we saw between the governor's office and the state legislature when it came to the transient accommodation tax. That, of course, now is punted back to the counties. Each county now has to establish their own tax rate. I'd like to get an update from each of you on where you're standing on that, and we know that it can be up to 3%. First of all, do each of you have the mechanism to collect the tax? What will that tax look like, and what are your concerns about how that might affect Kama'aina? Mayor Blangiardi, let's start with you.
Well, we took a position in favor of Bill 862. After our discussions with the legislature, quite honestly, we felt it was fait accompli. Even if the governor had vetoed it, they were going to override, and that's exactly what played out. We haven't come to a determination yet right now as to when we would enforce. We met last week with Isaac Choi. We now, as a city and county, have an opportunity to develop a second revenue stream along with property taxes. There's a lot of benefit to that. There's a lot of strategy to that. We're putting the final stages together on that, but knowing that we have now the ability to tax, we're just going to proceed with that going forward. That's one of the things I made really clear to the hotel industry, much to their chagrin, but the quid pro quo was our promise to deliver on cracking down on illegal vacation rentals. So we go forward.
Mayor Victorino, have you settled on a tax rate?
We're working with the county councilor at this very moment. We've introduced our plan, and the vice chair of the council has also put in a ordinance to collect this real property, this TAT. The transit accommodation tax for my county will be based upon the accommodations that are throughout the county. And for some islands, there's very little accommodation. In others, there's much more. Some of the challenges we face is, the state is not going to collect this. So we also have checked with the state tax department, and they will assist us with the documentation on what their revenue stream coming from the various particular properties on each county, and then we can then base our revenue off of that. And we have our finance department, our Scott Taruya and his people right now finalizing the plan on how when collections can start, and how this money will be distributed based upon the usage within our hospitality and usage for our residents when it comes to housing and other areas where residents are so in dire need of help. So we're real close to putting something together and following the lead of the rest of the mayors. We're looking at 3%, but that's not in stone right now. But I think that's where most of us will start and move from there as far as how we can utilize this TAT from the county's point of view.
And Mayor Kawakami, same question. Will you go to the full 3%? And do you have the mechanism to collect that money if and when you decide to start charging it?
I think as far as the mechanism to collect, we're all in the same boat. All four mayors were sort of scratching our head as to why they just didn't write the bill to allow the state to collect it, charge us an administrative fee, and why create redundancies? It's government waste. We already have a system to be able to collect it. Just why reinvent the wheel? But yeah, I'm gonna have to take the full 3%, and that's just to break even. When we pencil out how many services we provide to the state as far as sports facilities for our state schools, when we take a look at the amount of rescues our ocean safety has to do for visitors, the amount of rescues that we're flying our county helicopter to pull out visitors on state parks, just to make up that gap and continue to provide those services, we would have to take the 3%. And let's not forget that the American Rescue Plan money coming in from the federal government over the next 2 years, it doesn't even cover the loss of TAT to the county of Kauai. So I'm surely hoping that perhaps next session, the legislature can make amendments and perhaps make the collection simplified. But we'll just have to wait and see. But the way I'm looking at it, when we pencil things out, it looks like we would have to take the 3%. It's not something we're excited about, but it's just a financial reality to continue to provide services.
Mayor Roth, I would imagine that given the number of hotels on your island versus Mayor Blangiardi's island, you're facing a similar challenge where to make up that money to what was taken away, you're going to have to get to that 3%.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much true. And, unfortunately, at this point, none of us have a mechanism to collect this. I know that all of our finance directors are having this conversation. And, that 3% is assuming that we're doing the same amount of tourists that we're doing now. And like you said earlier, right now we have a lot of people coming, but when there's other destinations that are opening up, that 3% may price us out of a market to even get close to what we need. So it's kind of a scary thing, and Mayor Kawakami is right. They're going to have to make changes at the legislature for this tax to work for the counties. One of the things that we were told by some of our legislators was that the state could collect it, and unfortunately, the way they wrote the law, it's illegal for them to collect our taxes at this point.
I want to get to some questions here. We talk about affordable housing on this program. As long as I've been hosting it, we've been talking about affordable housing, and probably long before that. Marissa in Ainaloa has a question for you, Mayor Roth. He says, with people from the mainland willing to buy homes sight unseen for more than local residents can afford, how can residents ever hope to stay and live here? We have seen a real estate boom across the state. And what would you say to Marissa in Ainaloa tonight?
We've been focusing on affordable housing projects and making sure that those projects are, affordable housing for local people, where they're not going to be able to buy unless they earn a certain amount and under, and they're actually from here. So we've been working on several projects. We just got one that was kind of stuck for a while, and we unstuck it, and they're starting to move, and we're looking at about 450 housing units opening in the next couple of years for this one project. We're trying to work with some other developers and really put some initiatives together where we're looking at those people that just aren't earning as much as some of these people coming in from the mainland.
Mayor Blangiardi, Aki and Kaimuki says, what can you do at the county level to reduce the cost of living for families? It's a similar question. All of these questions really tie back to housing.
I'm sorry. It always goes back to housing as being the primary cost. And candidly speaking, Yunji, I think we were talking about affordable housing before you were even born, much less since you could remember. And that's one of the things that we came in here. Our top three had to do with homelessness, the rail, and affordable housing. So actually tonight, after this show, I'm meeting with some out-of-town developers that have been in town this week. We've met with local developers, and our first piece of legislation we put through, Bill 1, which was the rendition, if you will, an iteration of Bill 7 that had been signed into law 2 years ago as a pilot program that went nowhere, is now beginning to get some traction. So look, it's about cost of land. It's about, being able to build at a reasonable cost, understanding, the AMI and what people are actually earning, and be able to provide housing. We may end up in more micro units than we'd like and different kinds of models, but at the end of the day, that's a big initiative for us, and it just takes a while to get it going. So that's what we're going to pretty much do. Look, we're in for an inflationary period. Everybody knows that. With all the federal government money, we've all seen it at the grocery store or our supermarkets. We're seeing it at the gas station. We're seeing it in other places. That's going to remain probably pretty hot for a while. The one thing I think we can do and we can attack here is the cost of housing, maybe in many cases rental. But government historically has not been very good at that. And we've made this a very special project for us. I wish I could give you more specifics on what we're about to do, but we are all over that. And I'm really confident with some of the things we've been able to do at DPP and some of the people we've been dealing with and what we're looking to do, that we're going to make a big improvement there. It's going to take a while, but we're going to make a big improvement.
Mayor Victorino, building on what Mayor Blangiardi was saying about the increasing cost of everything, rent on your island was very high before the pandemic, notoriously so, people going onto Craigslist and other sites to find an apartment and it would be gone, same day. And I'd imagine that it's only gotten worse. We have the eviction moratorium ending in August. Are you concerned about a number of people perhaps finding themselves houseless or in dire straits when that happens on your island?
Well, we took a proactive approach from the beginning as far as assisting with rents throughout the county of Maui and rental assistance, both with the CARES Act from county funding and now the special rental assistance that all of our counties have received. I asked for 40 million and I'll probably be able to use 15 or 20. So it's just shown me that we are not as in that dire strait as far as rents and people behind in their rents. To date, we've given out almost $6 million over the last 2.5 months, but I was expecting a lot larger number. What I'm finding is mortgage and people that are behind on their mortgages, which is now being looked at from our point of view. And the other aspect is the council has just put together a $300,000 study on housing and what needs to be done. And we all knew this, but I think they've confirmed that infrastructure to these particular affordable rentals and attainable housing is really, really the big barrier because it has such a tremendous amount of cost by having the developers do that. So we have money set aside with our affordable housing fund to do a lot of that infrastructure so that when we have these lands available, I have somewhere about 750 to about 1,000 units that could get started all in the next 6 months to a year with the amount of funding that's available to put the infrastructure in and the land that's available. We could start moving on that very quickly. And like Mayor Blangiardi said, we've been on it from day one. Really during the pandemic, kind of let it slide a little, but we're back on. It's a hot topic in this community, and we need to move quite quickly to make sure we get this done, to make sure our workforce and our residents are able to live here and raise their families here.
Mayor Kawakami, this is certainly a problem on your island too, affordability. We've been talking about it for some time. Are you concerned about the eviction moratorium ending in early August? And what steps are you taking to make sure that people don't end up in a difficult circumstance?
I think we all are, and I think we're all facing the same challenge. We continue to talk and communicate about the rental assistance programs, about utility relief that KIUC provides, and it's slow. And I really don't know why it's moving so slow. I'm hoping that people are not going to wait until the last minute to try to flood the system, because we've seen what happens when that happens. But we're taking an approach, and it boils down to housing. I think the one common denominator that you've heard in these series of questions is housing. And I think the counties are held captive by policies that sound great but don't pencil out. And I'm talking about housing policies that are known as inclusionary zoning. You know, I want to thank our county council. They took a very courageous approach to revamp our housing policy that's something more workable. But if we're serious about housing, we need to be serious about housing. And right now, we're looking at underutilized assets. We have a project, Kealaula at Puoloke, and we worked with the state to get a state parcel, former park property that was underutilized, already had existing infrastructure. And if you can lower the cost of goods sold, these developers can sell the product at a lower cost. And that's really how it pencils out economically. And so if we want to take a look at taking the land costs and infrastructure costs, create these public-private partnerships, we really feel that on Kauai, that is the path forward to creating housing opportunities for our people, and that's the approach we're taking.
Yeah, G, I'd like to say something, if I may, because I'm so proud of my team, and I think that this deserves being said. We were granted $114 million initially from the state, federal government, and state for rent and utility relief. That number is now looks like it's going to be a minimum of 180 million, and we went about the task of trying to figure out, how to distribute that money as efficiently and as equitably as we possibly could. We looked at the mistakes that were made a year ago, not to denigrate any prior administrations, but in the early stages of the CARES Act money. We have now exhausted all of our federal monies. We're now into our state monies. We are, along with Catholic Charities and the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, we've been giving out nearly $1 million a day, and we'll continue to do that, nearly $1 million a day. So I got a briefing this morning from our own corporate counsel about anticipated levels of, evictions when it's lifted, and I think we've got that down to a manageable number. Hopefully, it probably will be in the hundreds, not in the thousands. I don't think some of this will be unavoidable, but at the end of the day, that's something I'm really proud of. And in fact, because the federal government tracks this, Honolulu has been ranked the #1 city in the country for doing it. And for me, on behalf of my team, I'm really proud of that because we saw a real need on something we could do, and they jumped all over it, and they've done it, and they've done it extremely well. And I want to say that for reassurance to anybody living on this island as well.
I want to stick with you for a second because we've got a number of questions coming in tonight for you, Mayor Blangiardi, when it comes to HPD. We have an interim chief right now. Of course, you don't get to choose the chief. The police commission does, but we are in a state of transition at the police department, if you will. We, of course, have 3 HPD officers charged with the shooting death of a 16-year-old. On the one hand, do you think that our police department needs to be reformed? And I want to also bring in Amy's question from Kailua. She says, what is your plan to strengthen HPD? So sort of two different questions about the same issue.
Well, it's a good question. First of all, we have 289 vacancies in HPD. We actually have 550 between HPD and the fire department, except the fire department has people in queue. We are in the recruiting mode for the police department. So the question of leadership is a big one. Right now, Interim Chief Vanek and myself are working very well, but as everybody knows, the commission's received applications. They have yet to vet them. I don't know who the finalists will be. So under the interim circumstance, though, he's doing everything we possibly can. So we've now engaged with Steve Arndt, prosecutor. We've reinstituted the Weed and Seed program. We're going to be doing that pretty aggressively. We've also, as it was recently reported, in fact, in today's paper, we finally got a decent break and a decent article about the police work we've now begun to do on a 24/7 basis in Chinatown. So look, I come from a place and an understanding in my years of being in broadcast and news and understanding communities. People feeling safe is first and foremost. It's not just necessarily in a pocket like Chinatown, across the board, and not just because I got the SHOPO endorsement, but I really do believe in having a strong police department to be something in support of this community so people can feel good and safe.
Mayor Roth, I want to ask you about 30-meter telescope. We know that construction is not going on right now, but if and when it does start up again, certainly there will be more protests on the mountain. How do you plan to address that situation if it does come to pass?
Well, first off, I think the community and TMT has been working a little bit better together. Both the Kiai and people in the telescope community, the astronomy community have been talking. I don't think I'll take the same role as Mayor Kim had taken. This is really a state issue. We will take a leadership role, but it'll be a different role than was taken in the past.
Mayor Kawakami, we have all these specific questions for each of you. I want to ask you about your police chief under fire a number of months ago for allegedly mocking Asian Americans. You stood by him when some others called for his resignation. Tell us about your thought process on that.
Well, it was in poor taste. And, quite frankly, I don't know what he was thinking when he made those comments, but, I've been able to work with him. I think he gets it. And so we've moved past that situation and we're all focusing on making sure we take care of this community. So, for Asian Americans, Japanese Americans, it's going to sting and it takes time. And that's the bottom line. It boils down to, time heals. I think he understands that. I think the Asian community understands that. But I'm a mayor that has to work with everybody for the best of Kauai. And I cannot let those type of things slow us down because we have so much things to do. So we've moved past that issue and I know it hurts, but I think he understands.
Mayor Victorino, Casey on Facebook wants to know what happens when all the choke international tourists come back, and do you really think that aggressive airlines like Southwest and others will cut back on their flights?
Well, first of all, Maui County has never been really a high destination for the foreign visitors. First of all, because we're not an international destination, many of our international travelers have to travel inter-island. And so we've never had a big dependency on the international tourists that are coming. Most of them go to Oahu and the Big Island, not so much to Maui County. And so I don't think it'll be a major impact once the international markets open up. Although I do admit it does help. They spend more, they're more courteous, especially our Japanese visitors. There are a lot of reasons why I enjoy them. And as far as other aspects of our hospitality industry at this time, again, we're working on many plans, as all of the mayors are, and I'm very confident that working with the hospitality industry, the stakeholders, our Kanaka, and all other parts of our community, we will come and become more resilient, and our economy will be diversified with technology and wellness and other areas that I believe really needs to be spoken about, and not the dependency on the hospitality industry.
An issue on all the islands, but particularly on Hawaii Island, is trash. Mayor Roth, when you were running, you talked about wanting to be more green on the island. We know that the landfill issue is definitely one on both sides of the island. Can you tell us what progress you've made on that?
Well, one of the great things that we've done in the first 100 days is we held a sustainability summit, and we brought in about 2,300 people who registered, and it's on Naleo TV, sister station, but they've had about 17,000 views, and we took 14 different topics, one of which, of course, is dealing with recycling and environmental management. And so we're looking at different options coming out of that. But we're starting to get people together, communicating with each other, and hopefully we'll have some really good plans coming out soon. We have some real issues, not just with solid waste, but probably our biggest issues are in wastewater. And that one topic alone is probably $2 billion, which is 3 times more than the county budget for a year that we need to look at. And I know Maui's got some similar issues. Honolulu went through some similar issues with that. And so, we're looking for solutions.
Well, given the scope of the problem, when you talk about needing that kind of money, where do you even begin?
Well, one of the things that we looked at the legislature, and we're going to come back to the legislature, is public-private partnerships. We have on our island some private endeavors doing wastewater that do a great job, and they can do it economically pretty well. And then we have some of our infrastructure on the Big Island that, needs a lot of repairs. We're looking at EPA, and so we've made a lot of progress. I'd like to say probably more progress in the last 6 months than we did in the last 20 years in this area.
Mayor Blangiardi, Jeff wants to know, he sent us an email, Honolulu County property tax is extremely low relative to other states. Why not raise property tax on non-resident owners and buyers to discourage investors and give residents a chance to buy?
That's a good question. We're looking at that. I promised we wouldn't raise property taxes on local investors, but there's some properties and situations we've taken that into account. We've been a little bit slow during this pandemic to necessarily pull the trigger on that, but I think that there's a real possibility that we're going to look at certain kinds of properties owned by offshore investors and change the tax code.
And I wonder what you would say to the question that we posed to Mayor Victorino about the international visitors, because Honolulu obviously is an international destination. How do we balance that? Because when we have this rush of folks coming, that is not accounting for all the international visitors.
Yeah, that's about 43% of the market on Oahu when it's at full bloom. I go back to, what we're going to do with illegal vacation rentals and our efforts to help manage tourism, and that's going to be the crux of it. Now, how many international visitors are staying in illegal vacation units? I don't know. Many of them tend to want to go to the hotels, but we're going to sort that out and do the best we can. Look, tourism is our economic engine, and we're doing everything else in every other sector that we possibly can to stimulate, to grow different businesses and do whatever we may. But at the end of the day, we just don't want to be overrun. And we're going to try to handle that to the best of our ability, and just quite hopefully within the context of that, we'll be able to manage our Asian business as well. But it's a key part of our economy, and we welcome it back. We look forward to having our Asian visitors come back.
I want to give each of you about a minute to share a final thought with us tonight. The hour goes so fast, we could spend another with you, frankly. But I want to get your take. We're in a very strange position right now where we're not really in the post-pandemic era. Those numbers today certainly were a slap in the face to a lot of us who were hoping that things were getting better. What is your outlook on where we're headed right now, and what are your concerns going forward? What's your final message to our audience tonight? Mayor Kawakami, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm always optimistic, and I do believe we're heading in the right direction. More and more people are getting vaccinated. They're getting their first shot. They're becoming fully vaccinated, and but we got some work to do. When all the dust has settled and we move forward, we're gonna have to learn what worked, what didn't work, how we can rebuild trust, how we can strengthen our healthcare system, how we can take a proactive approach towards healthcare versus a reactive approach, because we see what it looks like when our vulnerable population is at risk. We're not going to forget them. We're going to rally and protect them. But we all have a personal responsibility, I think, to take care of our health. After all the dust is settled, we better have learned from this.
Mayor Victorino, your thoughts about where we are and where we're heading?
Well, for Maui County and I think much of the state, at this time we're still in a very good place. However, we need to continue to, like Derek mentioned about vaccinations, and really bringing in a better lifestyle, a healthier lifestyle. What I've talked about wellness and being able to have an industry called wellness here, which already has started with Larry Ellison on Lanai with Sensei, and somehow he produces food, how he takes care of his visitors, the wellness, when people come in to become well or to get well or to stay well. I think that also transfers over to the general public and to our residents. And a healthy community who are taking care of healthy people or getting people healthy will really blossom. And that's where Maui County, I believe, is one of our major steps. Agriculture is our second major move, that we want to produce enough food to be sustainable, not only for our county, but to provide it for the rest of the state. Just like Mr. Ellison is doing, his food is now being produced and served all over the state of Hawaii. And I think we can, like the Big Island, we have enough land to do something like that, to be able to be leaders in the food industry, especially when you're talking healthy, viable food.
Okay, and Mayor Roth, your thoughts?
I think we're in a pretty good place. We had a tough day today, but all in all, I'd rather be living in Hawaii than any place else in the world. We have the greatest people, and they do rally together when things happen. So, even though we had a tough day, I think we're in a much better place than other places. I think with what we're seeing, not only in tourism, but thinking about sustainable energy, agriculture, there's so many great things that we have going for us. And if we just do what Mayor Kawakami said, learn the lessons, move on, we're going to be fine in the future.
And Mayor Blandriardi, we have about a minute left. We'll give you the last word tonight.
All right, well, I'll try to talk quick. I want to echo what Mayor Kawakami said today. I'm very optimistic. I'm energized. I'm excited about the road ahead. We brought in more than 40 senior leaders both as directors and deputy directors, to augment some of the ones we retain. This team of people we have is terrific. You know, we had 60 days to put together a $4 billion budget, and it passed City Council for the first time in the first round unanimously. We had bond ratings this past week. We did well with that. Not as I would have liked to move us to AAA, but our bond sales yesterday went well. The city of Honolulu is in better shape than we thought. I thank the people paying property taxes. I thank the people, once again, 72% of our island, of those eligible to be vaccinated, have become vaccinated. So, you know, look, there's a lot of good stuff ahead. This is, I echo what Mayor Roth just said, the best place in the world to live. I'm so blessed that my life has taken me here. I wasn't fortunate enough to be born here, but I love it here, and this is a chapter in our lives where we're gonna make something good happen. Having stepped in the midst of this pandemic, out of that adversity, we're going to do great stuff going forward.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Of course, we thank our guests, Kauai County Mayor Derek Kawakami, Maui County Mayor Mike Victorino, Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi, and Hawaii County Mayor Mitch Roth. Next week on Insights, it's an issue that will take enormous effort to solve: homelessness. We'll hear from state, county, and community advocates on what can be done to end this crisis. Please do join us then. I'm Yunji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.